My name is Sam and I'm a Digital Transformation Officer at Southwark Council. If you're new here, the Open Digital Planning Programme is working to help make planning more accessible for both applicants and planning officers. And we are a collaborative team between our growing number of partner councils, DLUC and suppliers such as Unboxed and Open Systems Lab. So this morning we've got a very special show and tell celebrating BOPS, our back office planning system. And we're going to be hearing from our BOPS product owners, Stephen and Freya, and from Unboxed as well about some of the more recent work about householder applications. If you have any questions throughout, please post them in the chat and we will try and get back to you either in the chat or at the end of each session if there's time. Hopefully we'll leave time at the very end for any remaining questions. So on the agenda today, we've got Stephen taking us through what BOPS can do and a householder application demo, user research playback with Laura, and engagement plan with Freya, and the next on the roadmap also with Freya. So Stephen, shall I hand over to you?
Thanks, Sam. Yep, I'm Stephen Barnes and I'm a planning officer who's now working as part of the digital innovation team at Lambeth Council with a focus on BOPS. So if you're not familiar with BOPS, here's a quick run through of where we are up to right now. So over the past couple of years, we've developed a back office system up to the point that it can process lawful development certificates. And based on the features that we made for that, we've quickly delivered all the features that we need for the most common types of prior approval applications. And what we're really pleased to talk about today is our work on householder applications. On the next slide. So BOPS is a data-led back office system, which is all about giving a consistent experience, as colleagues will touch on later. We're currently hooked up with PlanX to receive the kinds of applications they can send us, with GovPay and Notify to deal with payments and handle consultation requirements, more on that later. And we're currently working on an integration with the planning portal. This is something that will unlock huge value for BOPS by opening us up to receive applications from the nation's biggest source of planning applications. But next up this morning, I'll be running us through the additional features and improvements that we have made to be able to deal with householder planning applications. So I'll just share my screen. So here I am logged in as the case officer who's going to be picking up this application in BOPS. It's nice and clear to me where I need to get started. I just go to step 1 and check and validate. So what do I need to do next? Well, inside this page is a nice clear list setting out all the tasks that are involved in validation of a householder. The new features that we've added for householders are around seal liability, improvements to checking constraints, and checking for missing documents, which I'll just quickly go through now. So for seal liability, this is really simple. It's just somewhere to document whether it looks like seal is liable or not. We're using PlanX data here from the applicant, so that this is more of a check rather than something the officer needs to go and dig around for or get from an application form. So based on what was entered into PlanX, this is already sort of answered for us. We are just marking this as checked if we think that sounds right. For constraints, it's a nice table of constraints. This is sort of built on just having a very simple list to having what you can see now. This has got some context around what each constraint is, so a high level sort of category, and then the detail and description. We've also got the start date, which is kind of future-proofing the system a little bit. So you can imagine if an Article 4 is picked up, but that Article 4 hasn't come into effect yet, you'll be able to tell from the start date here, and if it's no longer relevant, you can just uncheck that, and it will no longer, once it's saved, it won't be shown to the officer later on in the assessment process. And finally, for checking missing documents, what we really want to get to is a much smarter system that identifies missing drawings and documents, but our MVP solution is have just quick access to the local lists of requirements for whichever council is using BOPS. So we've got a link here, take you to your local application requirements. So that's just easily at hand for the officer. Once you are happy with everything, valid, continue to the next step. So the next step is consultation. For consultation, we built upon features we already had for sending neighbor notification letters to make this a bit more usable. And we built new features to consult with internal and external bodies. So that's our consultees. And we've allowed for the ability to organize site and press notices for an application. If we go into here, we can identify who we want to consult by drawing around the site. So like this is generating a list of the neighbors who we need to send letters to. I can make this bigger to expand the range, and you can see that it's updating here to include the neighbors that are within that range. This is a big improvement from what we were using before, which was just where you manually entering addresses and then adding them to this sort of list of who's going to be consulted. Once we're happy with this, we add the neighbors. And below here, this is the notification letter. So this is what neighbors will actually receive. It includes a link to the public portal, which would be a gov.uk ending link, but for this staging testing area, it's showing us this more complicated link. This is linked to the portal. I'll show you that in a minute. And we can issue the letters just by clicking print and send here, and then letters will be printed by Gov Notify and sent out to neighbors. This is the link. This is where the link in the letter takes you. It's also included on all of the other site notice, press notice, etc. This is what it looks like. So as a neighbor, I am able to go in and view the case documents, and I can also make a comment. I'm just going to quickly run through making a comment. My colleagues are going to talk about this later and how how residents are finding this later on. So just to show you, you can either object or support, or make a neutral comment. It's sort of structured. So there's prompts in here for what you might be talking about if you're concerned about design or function or privacy. And you can also add and send documents along with this as well if you want to bring something to the officer's attention. But that's the way that public comments can get. But really the point of that was so I can show you how comments appear in the back office. So the comments that go through that form are categorized back here into supportive or neutral or objections. And you can then redact and publish these depending on what your council does. So to redact and publish something, you would be putting it in here. And then if you needed to take something out, you can just edit a redacted comment and make that public. And then the redacted comments appear back on the portal, like so. So moving on now to the consultees, we've got a very simple solution for identifying consultees, which is by searching. So we've added some example typical teams like design and transport here for this demo. And we can preview, and if we want to edit the email that gets sent out to the consultees, we can do so in here. But this is what this is the kind of notification consultees will get. And we just send that out by email, clicking this button. Moving on to the press notice, sorry, the site notice. BOPS just asks us if this is needed or not. If it is needed, there's a couple of options for how we can send this out. So if you want to do it there and then, you can just enter the date that you're going to put the notice up in here, and it will generate this PDF with that date. Alternatively, send it to your internal team to post. So that might be a general planning inbox, or you can send it directly to the applicant, which is something which is a bit of a smarter feature. So once you email the site notice out to the applicant, they will get a link to be able to prepare that, which I'll just open up in another window. So they'll get a link to a page that looks like this, where they can download the PDF. The site notice date will then adjust. So the date that it needs to be displayed will adjust to the date that you're producing that PDF. And back in the BOPS system, it will allow 21 days from the date that that's been sent out, or produced by the applicant themselves. Once the site notice has been put up, you come back to add evidence of that. So you'd upload a photo of it on a lamppost or wherever it's been displayed, and enter the date that actually went up. So the system would then account for 21 days from that point, so that your decision is made, so that you get a warning about when the consultation ends, and you don't make a decision within the consultation period. With the press notice, it's very simple. Again, you'd state the reason why press notice is needed, and then that will be sent off to the internal team. But for the purposes of this demo, it's sending it to my email address. Once the press notice has been published, then you need to come back and confirm it in a similar way, adding the date and the evidence as needed. So once we're happy with our consultation, we've had all the responses back that we need, the officer can then move on to documenting their assessment of the case. In this task list are all the checks and tasks for a householder case. We've added assess against policies and guidance, which is down here, and the ability to add conditions, which are functions that we needed to be able to deal with this type of application. In assess against policies guidance, we can quickly document the main planning considerations. We've also got a link to the local plan and your local guidance, which is handy if officers need to refer to that. This feature is still in testing, but we tried to capture everything that might be useful for a householder. So the most common things are going to be design and the impact to the neighbours. And we're trying to capture everything that we think is essential here. So policy references, and also this just gives a nice structure for officers to complete their assessment. I'm just going to put some dummy data in here. And once that's saved, that's the sort of officer's write-up completed. Then we might need to add some conditions, assuming that this is acceptable. In here, we've got the constraints that we've selected earlier on. And we've also got access to anything that we added into that previous form. So that's help remind us about any policies that we referred to, or anything that we wanted to pick out and say, this might need a condition. The standard conditions, which apply to householder applications, are all here. You just tick them to add them, and you can edit these you need to add another condition, you'd just be able to populate here and then add as many as you need, and then just save. So that's as simple as that. Once we're happy we've got all the conditions and assessment done, we can prepare this to send it on to a manager. Again, it's a quick check of what you've entered so far. You can confirm whether you're granting or refusing permission. You say this is acceptable as a reason for the recommendation, and then hand it on to a manager by review and submit your recommendation. And this gives the case officer a preview of the decision notice with all the conditions that they've entered and the site plan. Once you're happy with that, you pass it on to your manager by submitting the recommendation. And then I'll just quickly show you how this looks as the manager, just to complete the process. So now logged in as a manager, who's going to review and sign the case off. There's a much smaller, much shorter task list. I can see what the main recommendation is very quickly. In here, I can see whatever's been entered. We didn't enter that for this demo, but things around summarizing the works, the description. We can see who was consulted. We can see at a high level what the response to neighbour consultation has been as well. And for assessment against policies and guidance, if I want to, I can just accept this and say it's fine. Otherwise, I can make small tweaks to it. If it just needs sort of typos correcting or something like that. But if I'm not happy with it, I can always send it back to the officer. For example, they've missed something completely and I'm not happy. But for this one, I am happy. Conditions works very similarly. You can either accept or you can edit these if there's something particular you want to point out. But if you wanted to add or you wanted more conditions to be added or something else for the officer to think about, you might want to send that back straight to the case officer. If not, then you can just accept. If you're happy with everything, obviously there's a warning in here because the consultation's only started today, but assuming that was not the case and everything's fine, we can save and mark this as complete and then go ahead and finalize the decision notice for this to be sent off to the applicant. And that's the end of the demo. Thanks. I'm handing you on to Laura now to play back user research. And if you want to take over with the slides, thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, I'm Laura. I'm one of the designer researchers from Unboxed. So I'm going to talk you through some of the testing insights of just a few of the features that Stephen has just demoed. So just to sort of give you an overview, whenever we're developing these features, we start by talking to planning officers about what they need from it and what they're looking at the current process. And then once we've actually developed it, we'll go back out and test it with planning officers. So what we've been doing recently is testing our MP of sending a site notice, press notice, and checking constraints for householder. And we did this through remote interviews. So we asked planning officers to show us how they did this in their current system, and then we asked them to complete the task in BOPS. Next slide, please. So it was great. We managed to speak to planning officers across 5 councils using 3 different systems and with a really wide range of experience levels from graduate planner to someone with decades of experience. So it gave us a really good breadth of different perspectives. So on to what we learned. Next slide, please. So this is just really a quick overview for the site notice. Generally, feedback was very positive. At the end of the session, we ask, all our testing sessions, we ask participants to rate the experience against a set of design principles and against their existing system. This is just really to inform our discussion. So these are averages across the 5 users we tested with, and you can see they scored pretty highly out of 10. So overall, people found it very quick and easy to use, and the lowest score you can see there, the 4 out of 10, is from someone who currently doesn't need to take any action beyond requesting a site notice, because another team deals with coming in and confirming the notice. So for them, they had an additional step, but for other users, they found it very clean, quicker, very obvious what they needed to do. And all of the participants were really confident that they completed the task. A few opportunities for improvement were around being able to upload more than one document when they confirm the site notice, so they could maybe include an email from an agent to describe the exact location of a site notice. So onto the press notice. Again, very similar feedback. People found that it very easy and quick. Again, there was one of the lower scores came from someone who just simply requests a press notice, whereas other people were used to going and maybe saving a copy of the site notice. So there were different sort of experiences in current systems. But again, you can see some of the quotes there. It's efficient. Everything I needed to see is there. I know what to do. Some of the opportunities for improvement were around the step of confirming the site notice. There was a bit of confusion about what dates we were asking for, so that's something that we can look to improve. There were also some wider improvements we could make where there are two people involved in completing a task, for example, a planning officer and someone from an admin team. That might happen over a number of tasks. So we're having a look at how we can sort of create a pattern that makes it easier to identify where you need to do a task and where someone else needs to do a task. And then we also had a look at how we show the history of a task. So when someone's filled in a date, for example, how do we show that that is being completed, and just make it really clear to the user that something has already been done and what they still need to do. So on to checking constraints. As Stephen showed you, this is again a very simple task. And again, we got pretty high scores around this. So people found it very straightforward, didn't need any guidance in terms of how to do it. They trusted the information they were being shown. There was just one user who wasn't sure where the information had come from, but as soon as he saw the bit of information that said it's been suggested by Plan X, he was very confident in that information. So the only improvements we wanted to look at were things like if someone had maybe removed a constraint, making that clear in the layout, that then doesn't appear in a list in the sort of list at the top of the screen there, just so users are really clear on what's been done before in the history of that task. And then the other thing was obviously sometimes you might have a very long list of constraints. So we're thinking about how we can make it really easy for officers to find the relevant constraints or to sort through a potentially long list. But we did get very positive feedback about the tags. You can just about see here on the screen, we sort of use tagging to help group constraints into different categories. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Just a summary. So really overall, all 3 of those features, people talked about being quick, clean, easy to go through. And then I've mentioned where there are some opportunities of improvement. And these are all improvements that might actually have positive impact on other features across the wider journey. So if we go on to the next slide. We also recently did some user testing with residents about submitting a neighbour response. So again, Stephen just demoed this feature where a resident can submit a comment. We haven't reviewed all of these insights as a team yet, so I've got less to say about improvements, but it was really interesting. First, I'd like to say thank you to Landa and the resident engagement team at Barnet who helped us to recruit some of the residents. So in the end, we spoke to 6 residents across 3 local authorities. Again, we did this with remote interviews and user testing of BOPS applicant, where we asked the user to share their screen. So just what you can see in the bubbles there is we had quite a range of experience. So from someone who was part of a residents group who coordinated responses to local developments, very experienced in terms of planning language and how assessments are made and so on, to someone who'd never commented, even though they wanted to, but this person didn't feel confident to make a comment, partly because they just didn't know anything about planning and they weren't confident doing this task online and didn't know where to get help. We also had participants using different devices. One completed the whole thing on their smartphone with no issues. Others said they'd prefer to do this kind of task on a laptop or desktop so they could have a bigger screen because they expected to see a lot of information. Okay, next slide, please. So as Stephen showed, the journey starts on a landing page. The resident might have got a link in the letter they've been sent or seen on a site notice, and it would take them to this page. Most participants found it really easy to see where to make a comment. Something that was interesting was that people had different opinions about being able to view other comments before making their own. Some thought it was really helpful because they could see what kind of issues had been raised and what had been covered already, and to check they were commenting on the right things, and others thought it might actually influence their comment. So again, that's something that we can look to improve. Next slide, please. So on the next step, we have included some guidance about how to make useful comments. So this is something from a planning officer's perspective. We wanted to help ensure that people are making comments about material considerations and things that can actually be considered. However, we weren't sure if this was going to be too much information for a resident making a comment. So we were really pleased in testing that actually all of the participants found this helpful. Those that were more experienced said they'd kind of skim read and skip to the end, and others found it very helpful to say, oh, actually, I want to know what will be considered. I don't want to waste time and make comments about the wrong things. So that was really positive. Okay, and on to the next slide. This is where residents actually make a comment. So again, we'd kind of, rather than just giving people a big box to write a comment in, we've separated it into these kind of different options to try and guide residents to make comments about things that we will consider. And again, we weren't sure if this would add kind of too much work for residents, but this again received really positive feedback. Some people just didn't comment on it at all and just went ahead and made their comment. Others thought it was actually really helpful because it just kind of structured their thoughts a little bit. So on to the next bit is just in terms of actually completing the task. All of the participants were confident that they'd completed the task and submitted their comment. Some of them wanted some kind of follow-up notification by email, either to just say we've got your comment or to include an actual copy of their comment. So those that were more experienced sort of commenters, those people that know a bit more about the planning process, wanted to kind of save a copy of what they'd written for their records, or maybe to share with their residents group. And then really interesting, 2 people talked about the role of commenting and making them feel part of what was happening in their community. So if they saw a development happening, or even just something happening with one of their neighbours, they really wanted to feel able to make a comment, and they wanted to feel able to see why something had been granted or refused, because it made them really feel part of what was happening, and that was really important to them. So that was just something that was sort of unexpected that came out of this testing. And just finally, again, we asked the same questions. Obviously, we couldn't rate this experience in comparison to the current system because not everyone had used another system before. But again, generally very high. People felt very happy that they would easily be able to make a comment. Sorry to Landa, but one person made the comment it was definitely easier than what they'd used in Barnet because there was just less information. It was easier to find what they needed to do. So I think that is it from me, but thank you. We'll pass back.
Thanks, Laura. Let me just mute myself. Hi everyone, my name is Freya Kine and I work at Suffolk Council with Sam in the digital team, and I have experience as a planning officer. And within the BOPS team, I'm the Suffolk PO, and also the engagement lead. So we've just been working on our engagement plan for the next 6 months, so from now until around March or April next year. And the aims we want to get out of this plan is to help position the open digital planning community as a trusted local authority for digital planning experts in the UK. We also want to help support onboarding of new council partners to BOPS, engage other local planning authorities that are already part of the ODP cohort to take part in product testing and feedback, and also just to increase wider awareness of BOPS and promote it as a marketable product as we continue to develop this. So we're bringing this engagement plan into action now because we've done LDCs, we've finished householders, so we've really expanded the number of cases that we can begin to process on BOPS. So it's a really good time to start reaching out and proactively engaging new councils and to support the existing councils on the project to start using BOPS. So the way that we propose to roll out our plan, we're going to be visiting some LPAs over the next 6 months. We have around 5 visits sketched out, so we'll be contacting those councils over the next couple of weeks or month. There's also going to be another Open Digital Planning Group Day coming up early next year that we're happy to do demos at as well. And also doing lots of social media and comms internally and externally to update everyone on the site visits and other exciting news and developments with the BOPS product. And then finally, as I said, we're going to be updating and sharing onboarding materials and training to help get everyone using BOPS. So what's next for BOPS? So over the next month or 2, this is what we're going to focus on. So now that we've done householders, we're going to take a focus on minor applications. And we're going to start off with a focus on design and building the validation and consultation parts of BOPS. As you've already seen from Stephen today, a lot of that is already built, but it's just building on that to meet the requirements that we need for minors, because we understand they are more complex and there's a bit more to it than with householders. We're also going to be looking to adopt the Open Digital Planning Data Schema. So that's a standardised set of data for planning applications, which we're going to be collecting and monitoring across Planex and BOPS, but we'll update more on that at future show and tells. As Stephen said, we're going to be looking to integrate with the planning portal so that we can begin to get a lot more cases coming through into BOPS that we can process. We're going to be making end-to-end journey improvements for householders so that we can mop up any bugs or minor issues that we just want to fix to make that journey as smooth as possible for users. And then we're also going to review and update the onboarding process as part of our engagement plan to make it clearer and easier for the partner councils to onboard onto BOPS. So that's all from us. Thanks everyone for listening. I think we've had a couple of questions in the chat, but if anyone has any more questions and wants to put their hand up or just shout out now, then we can take questions and someone from the team will be able to help you with those.
I have had a couple of questions in the chat, Freya. We've got one, is it possible to run reports using BOPS? I don't know who'll be the best person to answer that.
What was that, sorry, Sam? To run reports?
Yeah, to run reports using BOPS.
Is that for monitoring reports or officer reports?
Yeah, I think the sort of answer to that is going to be like, we don't 100% know what councils want to be measuring at the moment. So there's lots of data that gets collected in BOPS, and then how we move forward with that is a bit unsure at the moment. Would I be right in saying?
Yeah, exactly, Sam. So we have got this monitoring and reporting requirement built into the BOPS roadmap. So it's something that we're going to pick up. But as Sam said, we're just waiting to find out exactly what Planex is gathering and also what all the councils need to gather so that we don't build something that doesn't meet everyone's needs. So before we start to build those monitoring tasks, we're going to need to do a bit of a investigation into what councils actually need to gather and report and monitor, so that we can build that and make it really suited to everyone's needs.
Yeah, very useful as well.
Thanks, Freya. I just wanted to add that we have an open source approach to BOPS, and so we expose the planning application data via an open API. So any key dates or fields can be extracted to run any bespoke reports you may want.
Thank you, Ben. There's just another question as well. How will BOPS be integrated into the public register, or will it replace the public register?
so I can pick this one up. So with the public register, this is actually work that Camden is going to begin to pick up as part of their digital site notice program. So this is very new. This has only been announced in the last couple of weeks. So we're still working out exactly how that's going to run alongside Plan X and BOPS. So we'll probably be able to give more updates on that maybe at the next show and tell after Christmas, but that is something that is currently being worked on and that we will be updating on Slack and also at the next show and tell as well. Okay, if there's not any more questions, then just to thank everyone for coming along today. Thank you for your questions and your interest in BOPS. These are our contact details on the screen. So there's our website and the email addresses for Lambeth, Buckinghamshire and Southwark. If you have any more questions after this call that you want to speak to us about, I think the social media comms are already in the chat, but if not, we can repost those. And the next show and tell is going to be in a month's time, and that's going to be a Plan X focused show and tell. So that's going to be on Wednesday, the 6th of December on the same link. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.